So with that, I'll call on Senator Ollier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director, as you talk about this kind of balancing act between fraud and paying people out, can you just explain a little bit the difference in how many more claimants would be delayed if we made a greater emphasis on decreasing the number of frauds? So just to put those two things into perspective, I know a lot of the report talks about how many of the safeguards were removed to provide people with a more timely payment process, and we all still know how slow that process was. If those changes had not been made, how much slower the actual payments would have gone?
Well, it would have gone much slower, much slower. I think the idea of stopping the 10-day hold wasn't necessarily a bad idea because we were trying to get the payments out the door. The problem is that the fraud manager then wasn't sequenced right, and the fraud detection happened after the payment was made. I mean, that was that 6-week period of time. That may have worked if we had the fraud detection happening before, so that we would have been able to reduce the number of days before somebody could have been paid. So, I mean, the idea was a potentially good idea if it had worked the way it was supposed to work. So there's always those types of things. I mean, you are trying to, and that's what you go to. I mean, you're sitting there going, okay, how do we pay these hundreds of thousands and millions of claims coming in? Can we do this? Can we do this? And so I think there was a lot of that kind of discussion going on. And in fact, we have those kinds of discussions now. I mean, I've had meetings with staff and we're talking about, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? And you're trying to figure out what that balance could be. How do you make sure that the fraud, I mean, in terms of the fraud manager, we were getting a lot of false positives, which was then saying a claimant couldn't get paid when there really wasn't any reason to not pay them. So, I mean, it's just this constant balancing act between not paying out to people who aren't supposed to get paid and paying those people timely who are supposed to get paid. And so there's constantly those types of conversations that are going on. And sometimes a lot of the stuff we've put in place has really worked well. And then we've got these situations that didn't work the way we had hoped they would.
And if I could add on, Senator, I think it's also to go back to just to show how that these criminal tactics and techniques have kind of evolved, right? This all started when pretty sophisticated criminal rings used the actual names, addresses, and social security numbers of real people that were stolen in other data breaches to file for benefits. Later on, as we had to require people to upload information and documents to verify their identification, we saw the influx of forged and fake, as the director has said, social security cards and birth certificates that require further investigation and training to let people know what to look for and what to be aware of. We've then seen a migration to reaching out to legislative offices. I know many of the members here on the committee have their staffs as a part of our weekly calls. We have a weekly call with legislative staff at the state level and with the congressional level to give them updates on what's happening. We've talked about, we know that people are reaching out to you who claim they're constituents and they end up not being. That we've had offices unsolicited on the calls talk about those experiences as well, where they've, somebody's called in, been very adamant that they're somehow being caught up in the system, that they need help. And then when they're asked, well, why did you spell your street name differently 3 times in your emails to me? The person hangs up and disappears forever. And then unfortunately, what we saw right before Thanksgiving, we saw these criminal elements go attacking the system in a new way, which is through legitimate claimants who are already receiving benefits, who are everything's fine with their case, but now they're victims of phishing scams. So as we've seen these criminal techniques evolve, we've had to evolve our techniques. I'll be very blunt. There was a time early in the pandemic where I thought the chances of a criminal calling the legislative office and asking for help was nearly zero. That who would be so brazen to do so? And unfortunately, I'd have to had several conversations with legislative offices who, rightly so, are upset because a constituent or someone they thought was a constituent was not getting the service they deserve, and had to tell them, well, the reason they're not getting paid is that person has unemployment claims out in 6 other states. Or as Director Olson has said, that claimant has an address that is connected with hundreds of other questionable claims. And so again, this all adds up to how the challenges the agency has to deal with, the issues around why some things may be not going as quickly as they can, and the fact that we have to evolve our techniques just as they're evolving their techniques. And all of that means things don't go as quickly as they should or how we would want.
I think to that end, I think we should be continuing to lean towards ensuring that payments are done timely, whether that means that there are still some individuals that get through the fraud, that we robustly prosecute those individuals. But I'm deeply concerned that we don't make fraud the #1 priority, but making sure that we make paying people the #1 priority. And so, Director Olson, I know there are a number of items that make this process a little bit more slow that are unique to Michigan. And I'm thinking about the look-back provisions on the number of employers that are looked back upon in Michigan, as well as some of the asset tables and items related to retirement income or that second job. So people who have taken on a part-time job as a warehouse person or at a retailer because their primary source of income is no longer available, and they have been either no longer made eligible or their numbers are being reduced in ways. What changes do we need to do to make sure that those people who had legitimate claims but may have taken on additional small income or things like that can continue to get paid in the benefits that they're earned without getting stuck in this constant recertification issue that is unique to Michigan and Michigan law? What changes do we need to make there? Because that's what I want us to do as a legislature, to be focused on the things that we can fix to take care of our constituents.
Okay, that was a lot of information. So I think what I heard was that you're talking about people who are have applied for PUA claims because they have income or jobs that would not have made them eligible for regular state unemployment, which is what the PUA process was designed to do. And so the issue is that there's still a process that those PUA claimants have to go through. And that is the vast amount of what we're looking at in manager review. But there's still a process, and there's still things that are required of those folks. And so,
I'm sorry, may I clarify? I think what I'm talking about is Todd, when he was here a couple months back, was able to outline how in Michigan, some individuals were only eligible for the PUA because in Michigan, we have the kind of longer lookbacks onto multiple employers that other states don't. And the second piece, that our asset tables are so much lower because of retirement and some of these other sources of income that people would not be eligible for Michigan unemployment. And so their only option was the pandemic unemployment assistance, where they would be eligible in other situations, like someone who is a parapro at a school who also worked part-time at Target, but no longer eligible for unemployment because of their parapro job because they're making $400 at Target.
Yeah.
That piece.
So